Hello and welcome to Trapped Emotions Podcast, episode 4. I'm your host, Andrew.
I'm your other host, Tyler.
So, the last few episodes, we've been getting into, some things in Tyler's posts. We're going to get a little deeper and see how it affects his personal relationship. So, he's going to read something for you, and then we'll get into it. I hope you notice we got mics that work, actually. So, let us know how the audio quality is this time. We're kind of pumped about it. We got a new camera, too, so the visuals should be a little better. So, all right. It's on you, Tyler.
All right. So the name of this is starting to identify because as we've been going through this, episode one, two, and three, we really focused a lot on the emotional and mental pain. Now we're starting to identify a lot of the character defects that keep coming up in our everyday life, right? So I suffer from self-doubt, self-hatred, fear of abandonment, anxiety, depression, codependency, anger, resentments, survivor's guilt. I want you to stay, but I want you to leave because I can't be what anyone wants me to be. But I don't want to lose people, but I try to protect myself from pain. So I hurt myself before anybody else hurts me. I am broken, and only I can fix me. But I want someone else to fix me so I can be the martyr and the victim. When it falls apart, I can blame them. I feel the rain coming down, asking for God to take all this pain, but hear no answers. When's the sun gonna shine? I can't believe shit's come to this. But like Usher, I gotta let my soul burn, right? I get in these relationships with people. When they are going great, I run. And I run because of the fear of having an actual healthy relationship. I am so used to things being toxic, and to be honest, I love the chaos of it being toxic. So when something healthy comes along, I am going to just burn it down so I can sit in misery and say, "See, I told you," and play the victim and act like they make a monster out of me. But reality of it is I have strong trauma from life that I can never dealt with, and I hide in codependency, which is big.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's healthy, I push it out the door. I am very I am very impractical, to be honest. I'm very mentally delicate and I hide it. In reality, I must work I must work on learning to forgive myself for past mistakes, for past failures, having to focus on rediscovering myself and learning how to fully love myself. I must admit my character defects and shortcomings in order to heal. I must identify why I do things I do. Let me out. Change is coming. Change is coming. Needed to be ready for it. Change the mind by identifying the character defects and shortcomings. And then the next one we're gonna do is gonna be really ridiculous, and like I almost don't want to do the next one, but that's where we're at right now. So
Yeah. I mean, so like we saw the progression of where you were mentally, with your suicidal thoughts in the last few episodes and just
hmm
like not knowing where to go. And now like it's getting to the part where it's affecting your personal relationships and you're really getting into how much it does affect them. And I can relate to that because that's why we started talking
yeah,
because of both of us having, similar relationship issues. And I can relate 100% to being in a relationship and just waiting for it to go wrong.
hmm
And I think I self-sabotage so many times, and not only that, I felt that whenever a relationship was going a way that I didn't want it to go, I would shut down immediately and do what I could to get out of that relationship, whether it be push the other person away and whatever I had to do to make sure that I didn't get hurt anymore. So who wants to get hurt,
yeah,
and that's the thing. I
absolutely.
you know most of my relationships caused a lot of pain.
I mean, absolutely right. And the biggest thing for me is like I get into like sometimes I'll get into these relationships with people and it's almost scary, right? Like it's scary when things are going good because it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not ready for this. And like then we start picking them apart, right? I start picking apart like, oh, that insecurity of theirs is so crazy and like I can't deal with it and then we play the victim. You know what I mean? Or at least I do, right? I can't say
Mhm.
we. I mean in all reality like I do. And then like I always tell people like you're one of three people in somebody's story, right? I'm either a hero in your story, a villain in your story, or I don't matter, right? And like I understand that, and for me, like I almost want to be the villain in everybody's story, right? Because like it's easier, right? And like I try to protect myself from like that self hurt, but like in all reality, that's why I talk about like I want you to go, but I want you to stay, and like oh see you left, like I knew I was right, right? And I
Mhm.
I try to push people away. This isn't just intimate relationships. You know what I mean? Like I do this for friends, I do this with family, where like I'm always almost testing people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
definitely.
where we're almost testing them into the like to prove that I'm right. And a lot of that, man, is because I struggle with these trust issues where like we all do, but like like I look at it like, man, like, we were just talking before this about like when I was dating that girl and like she cheated on me with a guy from work, right? And like, sure, like I had a part to play and all that, but like, damn, like I wasn't cheating on her. So like, I looked at it in that aspect. Like I never cheated on her, but like, so like, she's the bad guy. Well, I mean, in all reality, like there's other issues. Like it takes two people, right? So, but it's easier to blame somebody else and take responsibility for our own actions because why would I want to do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
feel you. Yeah,
Uh,
and
it's
it's
crazy.
like I was thinking about when you were talking. I was thinking about what we talked about earlier that we kind of disagreed on the whole red flags thing,
Oh, Jesus.
and in the fact that I believe that we go into a relationship expecting certain things out of it. And because of that expectation, at least for me, I ignored so many red flags.
Boy,
Be,
did I.
you know, like I wanted them to be how I wanted them to be. And I had hoped that they would change into the person that I needed to be in a relationship with. And so when they didn't live up to that, after I ignored all these red flags, that's when I would start to detach from them. And
Yeah.
that's when I would start to distance myself and then find a reason to leave them so I could, be the victim and say, "Oh, well, I tried, but they did this to me, so I had to leave." And you know how many times I've done that in the past? Like really thinking about it right now, I was always the victim and I didn't really take responsibility for my part in this situation. Like the fact that there's certain, exes that I chose to be with that weren't anywhere that I was, and they weren't heading the same places that I wanted to be. But I tried so hard to manipulate them into going the same place, and it never worked out. And then they were the bad guy. When realistically, I should have just left it alone and not even tried to pursue a relationship with someone who wasn't going the same places that I was.
I mean, do you really believe that?
Yeah.
Because like I guess I don't, right? And I guess this is why I differ from you, is because I don't necessarily think that I've gotten with people that are not on the same level, so to say. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think it's that like we grow within a relationship, and it was like I want to go right, you want to go left, and like from there we kind of grow apart, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Like I also think of it like now, right? Like present day now. I think because God forbid I'm trying to go on this dating scene again, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. You know.
This dude's asking me, "Is this girl real? Do you know this person?"
Yeah,
Like he
and
thinks if I don't know that,
not
they're not real.
not only that though.
It's
Like I'm
funny.
tired of people using filters, right? Like
Oh, we can.
yeah, like come on, man. Like be your real self. Like I'll be watching these people. Like that's not what you look like in real life. Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? But that's neither here nor there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Back to the topic.
Yeah, going. So like being back on this scene, like I've realized like, man, if we could just be honest with each other up front, right? And this is where you and I differ, right? Is because I think I want to know this shit up front, right? Like I want to know, do you have insecurities? What are they? Right? And these are some of my insecurities and some of my issues I have. And I want to know yours too, because I want to know up front so I can make a conscious decision. Do I want to go down this road with you or am I out? Right? Because I would much rather do that now than spend 2, 3 years in a relationship where that insecurity shows up and I'm like, oh shit, this isn't what I signed up for. And it's like, man, I don't, and then you almost feel stuck. Or at least I do, right? Because I've been in relationships before where it's like I feel stuck, like I want out, but like I'm not, right? Because I'm like, I'm like stuck in the whole concept of like I want out, but I don't want out. Is this real? Is this not real? And like, man, if we would just be upfront in the beginning, right? Like, man, we could deal. We don't have to waste as much time with each other, right? Is kind of the way I feel with it.
I feel that.
I don't know why it's funny. It's real. Like, I mean, it's real. You know what I mean?
No, see, I feel that, and I want to go back to what we were talking about before, and then I'll hit on that
Oh, I can't
because
wait
you know that we have different perspectives on that.
on
But
everything.
but so when you were talking about someone not growing with you, like that's the red flag that I ignored. I was getting with these women who weren't growing. They weren't going anywhere. They didn't want to grow. They were stuck in the same cycle, and here I am doing whatever I can to grow every single day, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and they're staying stagnant. By the time I got to the end of the relationship, I wasn't the same person that got into it in the beginning, so I'd completely lost all interest in them. And that was my fault because, like I said, that was something that I should have paid attention to in the beginning. You know, so I think that's one of my red flags that I ignored. Where is this person going? Are we going, the same place? Are we on, two parallel lines right next to each other? And most of the cases, all of the cases were no. That answer was no.
See, I don't know if I believe that. Right?
Okay.
And that's why we differ is because like I don't think it's necessary. So I think for me, and let me speak for me, right? Is it's almost like I'm afraid to grow with somebody, right? Because like I said, like if things start going healthy, I want to leave, right?
Afraid to grow.
I'm a,
Really?
I'm afraid to grow with someone, and it's because like I I justify it by saying they're not growing, right? But they are. Everybody grows.
You think?
They're just not growing at the capacity that I think I want them to do,
But
right?
you really think that everybody grows? Like
Yeah,
everybody is interested in bettering themselves. You don't think that
one
there's
hundred percent.
people out there that are just stagnant in
I
themselves and not willing to change
Sure,
at all?
sure. There's people out there that like, there's people out here that are like, yo, I'm cool where I'm at, and they're just happy with where they're at. Who am I to say you should be going somewhere different, right? And I think that's kind of where I fall. Like this is my character defect too,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is because I want you to be better than you probably want to be for yourself, but it doesn't mean that you're not okay with where you're at. And I look at it like you shouldn't be okay with this, but maybe they are, right? And that's where I falter at is because I have to remember like just because I want to go over here doesn't mean that you want to, and it doesn't mean that you have to, right? I think part of being in the relationship is us having enough respect for each other, and what makes it healthy would be like, at least to me, I don't know, because shit, if I had a healthy relationship, I want to be back on the damn dating scene again, right? But I think at least for me is like what makes something healthy is like the communication in a relationship where I can say, hey, I want to do this, and like I'm gonna do this aspect of like where I'm trying to go, and like you don't necessarily have to go there with me because like I say all the time, man, we don't have to be on the same page, but we at least got to be in the same book, right?
I
Meaning
agree.
Meaning, I just need you to support me, right? So if I'm going over here, just support where I'm going. And like, you don't necessarily have to go there. You're going to go there by default by being with me, right? Vice versa, right? Because I've been with girls too that are like, yo, I'm trying to go over here. And I'm like, but I'm not. Like, I'm cool over here because like that's where I was at that time, right? And so here's the problem. I don't give it enough time for that person to say I want to be better, right? I automatically get into, and you know this because we've been friends for how many years, where I get into this whole, okay, we got to go here, let's go now, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, let's go now.
Squirrel.
Yeah, I'm like, let's go now. And like, that person might not be ready. So who am I to say, hey, you need to be ready to go over here when I want to go over here, right? I don't think that's growing together. I think that's communicating together. I think the growing together is where we are able to grow into a place where we can communicate open, honest, and like have that trust in that relationship that we know, like, back to the insecurities, like, here's what are your insecurities, here's mine, we can communicate so you don't have to worry about those when I'm over here, you know what I mean?
Yeah. See, and going back to that, so where we differ with that, the insecurities, and you know, talking about all that in the beginning, I get what you're saying. It would be nice to know, what someone's been through, but at the same time, I feel that full disclosure in the beginning of getting to know someone completely eliminates the mystery, and it takes the
I don't want to be a
thrill.
mystery dog.
But that's how people are, though.
Yeah, I
Like
get it.
people are more attracted to mystery and learning about someone.
Yeah.
You know, if someone comes up and tells me very forthright, like I just went through this, blah 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 blah, like when we first meet, like I'm gonna be taken aback, like whoa, slow down, why don't you talk to me, like, what things do you like to do? Let's start with that, not
Sure.
your, mental and emotional trauma. But I get what you're saying. It is nice to know things, but I think that that's the process of growth in getting to know someone is by disclosing things, here and there as you go. When you get to know each other, if something comes up, then you talk about it.
I mean, I yes and no, right? Like, I see what you're saying, and I mean, obviously I respect where you're coming from, but I think for me it's like, I don't need to tell you, I don't need to go into the deep disclosure, and you don't need to go into deep disclosure up front. But like, the insecurities come out, right? Where it's like, I need to be able to be like, you know what? Like, I do struggle with trust issues, for example, right? But I don't need to say I struggle with trust issues because, they stem from when I was a little kid and like issues with my mom and feeling abandoned. Like, I don't need to go to that because, I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I first meet you. That's a little crazy. It's a little
Yeah,
much, right?
a little bit.
A little much. But like, knowing up front, like, okay, this person does struggle with trust issues. So that tells me that there's certain things in the relationship that I'm going to have to be willing to do to help that person grow through that trust issue with me, right?
Of
Because
course.
like, if I have a trust issue with you, there's certain things like that you have done through the course of our relationship that like I don't have that issue with.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, definitely, there has to be, a conversation in the beginning, what to expect out of the relationship, let the other
Oh
person
yeah,
to know
expectations.
what to expect out of
I
me.
didn't
I
think
mean,
about
because
that.
like I usually go into meeting someone and say, hey, these are the three things that I value the most in a relationship: honesty, effort, and communication. First of all, I believe that we have to be able to be honest about anything. We don't necessarily have to disclose everything to someone, but if they ask, I'm the type that believes that we should be honest about it. And if you ask me, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to tell you, what you want to know.
Absolutely.
Second, effort. Okay. So if I'm trying to communicate and spend time with you, exponentially more than you're trying to spend with me, that's a red flag to me. I want to know that someone is interested
Mm.
in my time. and that someone is interested in getting to know me. Communication is huge. I've started talking to, females in the past where I would message them in the morning, we'd message a couple times, and then I wouldn't hear from them all day. And I understand everybody gets busy, but at the same time, if you're really interested in getting to know me, I believe that you should at least communicate like, "Hey, sorry, I'm busy. I'll message you later." And I feel like a lot of my past relationships have lacked communication. I mean, I had one specifically, I remember I would message her in the morning, "Hey, good morning. I hope you have a good day." And I literally wouldn't hear from her until like 4 or 5 in the evening. And this was, my last long-term relationship. We were together for 11 months. And this is, and goes back to another red flag that I ignored. I wasn't being true to myself and the things that I expected out of that relationship. I was ignoring those red flags. But you know, now that's very important to me. So that was a huge red flag that I should have picked up on, and I should have just, you know, been out after I addressed it, because it was addressed multiple times and nothing was fixed. But those few things are very important to me, and I'm sure everybody has certain things that they expect out of a relationship and want from the other person, and I believe that, like, we should talk about it in the beginning.
So I think now we're getting into love language,
Okay.
right? Because like we're getting into the love languages because like at the end of the day, I also got to show somebody how to love me just as much as they got to show me how to love them, right?
Hmm.
So we know, and you and I know, no, obviously the people watching don't know, but like words of affirmation is my love language, right? Like I will talk to you about this all day. And like that's my love language. And quality time. Like I want to spend quality time with you, right? Like put your phone down, right? And like if we're spending time together, don't be on your phone. If you're don't do this. I'm not going to do that, right? If you come over to hang out with me, like whatever, like I'm putting my phone down, right? Why? Because I'm spending quality time with you, right? Whatever's happening on my phone, if it's an emergency, trust me, somebody will get a hold of me, right? And like those are my love languages, like something that you and I have talked about. Your love language is act of service,
Hmm.
right? So where you're like, I want to do this for and like help this person with this, and this. I don't speak that, right? So like I don't know that language. It's foreign to me. So at the same time, I'm never gonna know. So like let's fast forward. I'm in a relationship. Let's say I'm in a relationship with this girl, with somebody, and like here I go, and and I'm speaking words of affirmation, and she's speaking like acts of service. Neither one of us are gonna understand what each other are saying because we're not communicating properly through that love language, right?
Hmm.
Might be communicating through the words, but not the love language. So where I'm saying like why can't you see that like I love you and care for you, and she's saying why can't you see it, right? Because she's trying to show me through acts of service, I'm trying to show her through these words, where because I'm big on that, right? Like if I'm I remember like I was in a relationship one time for like 3 years, and every day for 3 years I texted her as soon as I left the house. I would text her in I love you, I hope you have a good day, yada yada yada. And then I would text her throughout the day, but like I did that every morning, right? Every morning like clockwork on my way to work. I felt it necessary to do. And for me, I was like, why can't you see? Because I'm going out of my way to make sure that I do this every day. And for her, it was meaningless, right?
Hmm.
Because that's not something she spoke, and she didn't understand the acts like that language. And she even told me that, right? Like it doesn't register to me. To me, it's lost its value. So again, if we're in these relationships and we're not speaking that language with each other, and if I haven't taught you this is my love language, and if you haven't taught me this is my love language, then we're lost in the sauce. You know what I mean? I'm in the mustard trying to catch up. You know what I mean? Stuck. And like I think that's where we're miss I think that's where we're focusing on, where we're saying like these are red flags. No, I don't think they are. I think like I think these are more of we're miscommunicating through the love language. Because a red flag to me is like, oh, these behaviors are controlling. These behaviors, like behaviors to me, are red flags. You know what I mean? Did that light just flash like that on
Yeah,
camera?
it did.
Oh, that was
That'll
great.
look cool
Well, we
though.
lost a light. So
Yeah, it's all right. We got one left. But yeah, no, definitely. Love language is huge, and I think that so many people do ignore it. And like I said,
absolutely.
everybody ignores. I shouldn't say everybody. I'm not trying to categorize, people and everything, but I know personally I would ignore those things. We get into a relationship sometimes and we're so gung ho about making it work by any means possible that we do ignore these things. And I know personally I can tend to drag out a relationship longer than, it should have been going on. And that's just me. I feel like trying to have a control over it and trying to manipulate it into what I want it to be. But that love language that's definitely like something to think about. I remember my one ex, she had me download that app, the love language app. She's like, "Here, take this test." And I guess like I completely failed it, and we
Well, there's
broke
no
up.
pass or fail. How'd
Well,
you fail?
I
You
don't
failed it in
know. I
her
don't
eyes.
know. Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
There's no pass or fail grade.
but it was one of those relationships where there wasn't really any passion,
Sure.
or it definitely was one that shouldn't have been. I mean, it wasn't bad. It's just like we just didn't connect on that level that is needed, for growth. And the love language though, I mean, mine, you're right. It definitely is like acts of service. And that's that
100%.
effort. That's the effort that I'm talking about. Like I want someone to be able to go out of their way and just, without me saying anything, it's just the smallest things like, hey, my girlfriend, what was it? About a month ago or so, right after we first started talking, she came and she brought me four candy bars, four candy
That
bars,
you
just
shouldn't be eating.
ran, yeah, yeah. But just like I didn't ask her for them, and like that meant the world to me. Just
Yeah.
for someone to go out of
So
their
that's
way.
gift giving, but
Yeah,
yes, that's
yeah,
that language.
yeah. And I mean, it's still in my eyes, it's act of service. Like
Sure.
that's the way that I want to be shown that you care. Not just by gift giving, but like going out of your way to know that you're acknowledging me, and that's important.
Ooh, that's a big word. Acknowledgement,
Yeah.
right? Like that's big. Cause like I think I can't say always, right? Because listen, I've said this over and over again on some of these episodes. Sometimes I'm the toxic person in the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm not paying attention to their love language. And like, and at the end of the day, like I also put on here, about like the self-doubt. Like I doubt myself a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like, man, maybe I'm not contributing enough to this relationship, or maybe I'm not doing this right, or maybe I'm not doing that right, right? And that's where my codependency comes in, right? And like nothing's worse than when you get two people together that are fucking codependent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you got this relationship, right, where like they're here, I'm here, and like we have so much trauma going on. Like I got trauma I got to deal with. They got trauma and insecurities they got to deal with, and they're bleeding into the relationship. But the relationship becomes so important that we're not focused on dealing with that trauma and stuff together. Then like that's kind of the definition of the codependent and where that codependency comes from,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is we look for, if you're happy, I'm happy. You're sad, I'm sad. You're mad, I'm mad. Like my emotions are now dictated by you. Like I just want to make you happy. And like that's where I like will doubt myself. Like, man, am I making this person happy? Oh my God, they didn't
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge this, so they must not be happy, so I'm fucking up. Right? And I know I said I wasn't gonna curse as much and I just caught that as it came out. But and I'm like, man, now I'm messing up because like I don't feel like I'm making them happy. Because also at the end of the day, my perception's jacked up, right? Like I'm a drug addict too, right? And I think like part of like the addiction is our perception on things. And like obviously cuz that's like one of the core roots of our disease of addiction. But like my perception's so messed up that like sometimes like I lose focus of that, right? And it's like, man, I'm not making this person happy. But like man, in a relationship, like you can be mad, have nothing to do with me.
Mm.
You can be sad, have nothing to do with me. And that's where like you and I, like that's where like we were talking, like that's what I have to work on communicating better, right? Is like if you're sad, I understand it has nothing to do with me, but I have to be there to comfort you. I have to be there to do that. And I kind of almost want the same from that acknowledgement. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And see, I feel like when there's correct communication, you're going to know that when someone's upset, it's not, it doesn't have anything to do with you. And
Yeah.
I believe that that's where the communication comes in. I mean, I've been in
Ooh.
relationships in the past where, they just be going through something and I'd be like, "Hey, you all right?" And they're like, "I'm fine," and there's no
That's
communication
me.
there about what's going on. So that's when those thoughts of self-doubt, and you're like, am I making this person happy? Is this something I did? Is this why they're upset? And not everybody wants to communicate their feelings and emotions, which is why we're here.
They're
But
trapped emotions.
right. But I believe that, when you build that bond in a relationship with someone, that it should it should come out, fairly easily. Like, yeah, like I had a bad day. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just going through something. I can talk about it here, when I feel more comfortable. Sorry, I had to burp. But but it's that communication, just the simple things in communication, just letting me know, hey, yeah, I'm going through something. You're good. It's just something happened at work. When I'm ready to talk about it, we can talk later.
You know what? That happened with you and I, right? And I'm gonna tell the story,
All right.
right? And because it goes deep, right? And it goes deeper than anything. But like that just happened recently with you and I, right? So this is how this plays in our everyday life: is relationships are not just the person you're sleeping with, right? Which is what people confuse, right? They go in relationships are like my friends, my family, my everything. So I curse a lot, right? I do. I know that, right? And like, and you and I were having a conversation, and you're like, bro, you shouldn't curse as much. I would like you to like tone it down some. And I'm like, man, fuck that. Right? I'm like, this is who I am. Like, I'm not going to change who I am for
That
this.
ego.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Right. And that's kind of what it was, a bruised ego.
Yeah.
Because I had a bruised ego because you were calling me on that.
And
And like,
I knew the way you reacted that it was ego, which is
right,
why when you sent me that message, I didn't even reply to it. I'm
right.
like, I'm
Because
gonna
I
just
got
let him
mad.
feel this out.
So I got mad. And then as you and I were talking, and then we were on the phone together, and they don't know this and whatever. So I was like, bro, this got nothing to do with you. Because at the end of the day, like when I was a little kid, and like I remember going to speech class, right? And I had to go to speech class because we had moved up here from North Carolina, and my accent was really bad, right?
Hmm.
And like I had to go to these speech classes, and then like on top of that, like I speak with double negatives a lot, and it bothers me, right? That I do that. It does. It bothers me
I
because
ain't got no.
yeah, right. Like it really bothers me, but I do it without knowing that I'm doing it, and like I remember when I was a little kid doing that, and then like on top of that, it goes deeper than that because I had a family member, if you want to call him that, because I don't really think of them like family, and we'll get into that later, which is because that's going to open up some doors that I'm going to have to, that's going to open up a fire I'm going to have to put out later down the road. Um, but like she used to like come over and talk about like, and no offense to anybody listening, but she would tell me like as a little kid, right? Like I was like 8, 9 years old, and she's like, "You're retarded. You're stupid. You're never gonna be nothing. Like listen to your talking. Like and you're a bad kid, and like all this stuff like that, right?" And like when you and I were talking, and you're like, "Change your language." You weren't saying that, right? You weren't saying change your language. You were saying tone down the f bombs, right? Which makes sense, right? And I'm like mad because I was reliving that moment, right? And like nobody knows that, right? And that's why like it's so important to have these communications in a relationship and understand like if I'm mad, man, it ain't got shit to do with you, right? It has to do with me and probably something that happened in my childhood. Because like I said, or even more, like I said in that, is like, you know, I struggle with, in our reality, like I don't even know where it's at and who cares. But like I say, like, you know, I struggle with a lot of trauma that's happened to me throughout my life. And like, in a sense, it's triggered very easily.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, I feel like any kind of negative reaction I have to anyone is always a trauma response. You
Sure.
know, it has nothing to
Absolutely.
do directly with what they did to me, because there are certain situations with people where they can say something to me that's offensive and I can just completely blow it off. But some people can say other things that maybe aren't even as bad as what the other person said, and I get so upset and I get very defensive about it. And that's one thing that I've learned in my shadow work, you know, working on myself and
Ooh.
through my character defects, that most of my responses to people that are negative have nothing to do with them. It's all internal. It's something that I went through that I haven't dealt with yet. It's a trauma response. And I think recognizing that in myself helps me to understand people and recognize it in other people, which we were talking about at Cook's Forest the other day. And how,
Yeah, but we recognize it in other people, just not in
yeah,
relationships.
yeah, right?
Like not intimate relationships, right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, we ignore those flags.
Yeah. And you know, I can get to a point with a person, especially like when I'm working and I'm delivering and I gotta go to this store, you know, with this manager that's it's always mean. I got one specifically, she was this manager and she was by the book. Like, you know, you took the stuff in there, you put it in a certain spot, you know, you did things in the order that she wanted you to do them in, or else, you know, she would get really snippy and get an attitude with you. And when she first did it to me, it triggered me. And I was just trying to get through checking all this stuff in. And she said something. I kind of got an attitude. And I said, "You don't have to talk to me like that." And then we just kept it moving. And then she finished checking me in. I put everything away. And I realized, like, I was thinking, I was like, why did I do that? Why did I let that bother me?
Because of Mr. Mooney.
I love Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney, if you're watching, I love you. I still do to this day.
Yeah, I hold a
But
resentment.
but I go back and I put everything away, and then as I'm leaving, I tell her goodbye. And I'm like, "Hey, goodbye. I hope you have a nice day," with a huge smile on my face. After that, this woman has never been nicer to me. Every time I go in since then, she's asked me, how's it going? Like, this goes way back to before I bought this house. And she would ask me, "Hey, how's your new house going? You know, blah blah blah. You know, what are you doing to it?" And just so friendly.
Killed her with the kindness.
And yeah, you know, I realized that
Hmm.
most of the time the way that people are reacting to me could be a vibe that I'm putting off to them.
Ooh,
You
yeah.
know, so we literally reflect what we put out. You know, it's you know, the yin and yang of the universe. You know, you get what you give. You know, it's all run by positives and negatives. You know, whatever energy we put out, we always get back. The law of attraction. And you know, so I try to be more aware and conscious of how I interact with people and why I have the response I do in certain situations. One thing I don't really understand is why I respond to my daughter the way I do sometimes. I love her to death, but I'm telling you what, like sometimes she, you know, she gets to me and I feel bad afterwards. And that's something that I'm actively working on because everybody knows I love my daughter. You know,
Yeah.
it's
She's a
been
nut.
her and I for so long, and you know, I love her to death. And you know, I think it's a lot, you know, we're the same person. And I think I see some tendencies in her that I had in myself when I was a kid. So, you know, she's literally reflecting how I was
I think
as a
it's
kid with my
jealousy.
parents. Jealousy.
I
Is it,
think it's jealousy.
we might
I
we
think,
might have to save that for another episode.
yeah, because I mean, I feel like it's jealousy. I feel like because it has been you and
Who?
her for so long.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the whole relationship. I mean, even before I was in a relationship.
Sure, but yeah, that might be, yeah. Let's do that on another one.
Yeah, you know, well,
And I think this one we've been going, and
yeah.
because I don't want to go any further into this because part six is crazy.
Mhm.
Part six is the realest shit I've ever wrote, and it's like the most honest I've ever been.
Yeah.
And like So the next episode that we're going to go into is really deep, and it's a lot of character defects, and it's a lot of things nobody knows about me. You know what I mean? Hell, you're just finding out stuff,
I know.
and we've known each other longer than just about anybody that I know. You know what I mean? Like I've known you the longest out of everybody, and like you're just finding out stuff. So I think there's a good. I think that we'll save that for the next one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were getting into your character defects, and I mean, relationships is a big part of our character defects. I feel like relationships is where, especially romantic relationships, is where our character defects are displayed the most.
Absolutely.
Because we get so close and intimate with someone, but yet it's like, we always hurt the ones that we care about the most. We always react harsher to the ones that we care about most. So this was an important episode, I believe, just getting into the whole relationship aspect of it and showing up, our character defects, I should say, showing up and, how to handle them. So I think we got a good episode here. And thank y'all for tuning in. This is episode 4. We have a couple more coming for this season. And that's it. So thank you. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Trapped Emotions Podcast. Very important. Please, please, please. You'll get notifications for new content every week. We put videos out every Monday. We're a little behind this week just because of the audio issues. I hope y'all love it. Hopefully we got the audio fixed to where you guys can hear us properly and everything. And till then, we'll see you next time.
Yep. Stay tuned. You want to tell them that, in the first episode, we talked about some things. So as we go through this journey, we're going to bring on somebody. We're going to bring my uncle on. So
Special guest.
my uncle's watching this. He's been watching these. So I know he's watching. So he's coming on. And we're going to have that conversation that we did in the very first episode that came out. So it's going to be interesting to see that in action. But yeah, man, I definitely hope that you guys like it. I hope you subscribe. Stay tuned, man. We're going to get into some deeper stuff as we go on. You know, absolutely, man. That's it, man.
Right.
Love you. Thank you for the support.
Love you.